everybody. Welcome to September.
I can't believe it's September already.
We are back from the UK. Some of us brought back an unwanted souvenir. I came down with COVID, but I have recovered and I am back. Donna did not get COVID.
Well, I still have a couple of days where I have to be careful, but if I can make it through the next few days, I should be good.
Yeah. When I got home and I realized how sick I was like, oh, great. I became a personal super spreader.
Patient zero.
Just so my in defense, I have been sick with stuff since July. And especially in August because I was with the toddler so much. And he did not have COVID. He had the I have a runny nose, let me stick my fingers in your mouth thing.
Gross.
So that's what they do though.
Toddlers are cute but gross.
Yeah. And he was definitely exhibiting all the grossness when I babysat him. So, and I've been sick since then, and so had Peter, and we kept testing and coming up negative. So I assumed it was more toddler crud.
Twas not.
It was not.
Oh well. It is what it is. I'm glad you're feeling better.
Yeah. Almost back to 100%. If I cough through this, I apologize.
Oh, well, I do that all the time because I have respiratory disease. So whatever. It's all good. So we're actually here, COVID notwithstanding, to talk about the Winged Tiara, which is by J'nell Ciesielski. I hope I said that right. I had to look it up.
Growing up in a Polish town, that's probably close.
Yeah. Also, my sister's name is J'nell, but instead of the apostrophe, it's an A. So that's an interesting spelling. I kind of like it. So we're talking about this one today, and I think we both agreed that the cover is gorgeous.
Oh, it's absolutely beautiful. It just jumps out at you. And I made a comment off stage, and I guess I will say it online. I was expecting an Asian heroine because the woman looks like my sister-in-law. I was like, oh, it's Helen. So,
right. And I guess if you look at the cheekbones and the facial structure, but that never even crossed my mind.
No, but now everyone knows that my sister-in-law is a very beautiful Asian woman. So,
yeah. There you go. The focal point for me is the glove holding the tiara. And I know it's not in the center. But that might be why I never even thought that, because my eye is automatically drawn toward that glove.
Now, see, that's funny. My eyes did not draw to that. It drew to her.
Interesting. I wonder what that says about our brains.
I don't know. Mine automatically went to her and up and down her face. And I thought for a long time, that was a cigarette. And then I realized, oh no, she's holding the tiara.
But, that's funny.
So
yeah. So I love the colors. I think that sort of teal background has become quite popular lately. I've seen it in a lot of covers.
Yep.
In fact, when I posted the books I read in August, all of the covers had that shade somewhere within. It was actually pretty interesting. So here we are again.
Very 1920s colors.
Yeah, and with the little frame around it, adding to it, and the appropriate font. And I love the gold. It just gives such a nice richness of the fabric, and then the pop of red. And I will always be on board with a pop of red.
Oh yeah, if this was face out on a shelf, it would pop out.
Yeah,
provided it was in the right place, which we're going to discuss in a minute.
We are going to talk about that. All right.
Do you want to jump? First, we should probably jump to the plot, which is the Winged Tiara is about dueling jewel thieves, both of whom have a motivation to steal the Winged Tiara, which is this tiara that was made with crown jewels for an opera, like 20 years before or 30 years before, something like that. And it's been missing, and it's finally come back on the market, and they both want it for different reasons. There's Esme, who's a jewel thief, and Jasper, who's a jewel thief, and they both want it. He wants it to return to his family. She wants it because if she doesn't steal it for her boss, they're going to kill her. So strong motivations. And then the added complication is, which you learn on page 1, they're married and separated.
Yeah, they were married all of 12 hours before He dipped. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's unique. It's a unique story.
It is
like
very unique.
Concept.
What do they call it? Great Gatsby meets Ocean 11 is what they call it on that.
And what did we say? Because we were like, what does this remind us of?
I think we both agreed Thomas Crowne Affair.
Yeah, and you said Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and I think that there's a bit of that too. Yeah.
There's very much a vibe of we really, really want each other, but we really don't want to be together.
Yeah, there's a lot of well, she walked out on him, so he has big trust issues where she's concerned, and then she's really emotionally unavailable. So otherwise she wouldn't have left in the first place. So yeah, I loved the concept. I thought it was really fun.
It is it's a very it's more, what's the word I want for it? See, I'm having COVID moments here.
It's kind of caperish, right?
That's the word. That's the perfect word.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a mind meld.
That's it. Filled my empty brain with it's very caperish. So that's why Ocean 11 does kind of fit. And the banter.
The banter was my favorite part. I have to, especially in the first third. It was like, man, just zing, 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 zing. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, reminded me a lot of I think she purposely wrote it to be like those 1930s comedies. Or
even like, it reminded me a little bit of like the Moonlighting vibe. Yeah. Where they were, or Remington Steele was another one that was, of course, we're all over Pierce Brosnan today, apparently. Because
what's wrong with that?
I mean,
we could all be all over.
But yeah, it was. I really enjoyed that part of it.
Yeah, I admit it was. Occasionally, I thought it was too on the nose, but that's nitpicky on my part because I was cranky and sick. In general, I think it reminded me a lot of the banter you get in like an old Barbara Stanwyck, Frank Capra kind of movie. Where there's one where she's trying to con Henry Fonda and they go back and forth. And that's what it kind of reminded me of. Or an old Katharine Hepburn, Spencer Tracy kind of.
Yeah.
Esme is a very smart heroine.
She is very smart.
So
very smart.
Yeah, she gives as good as she gets.
All right. So what do you want to tackle first?
I think we should be clear. This is not a historical fiction. It's an historical romance.
It is.
At its core. Because the romance very much, if you took the romance out, you wouldn't have much of a story. It would be very short. So it actually
it does have a happy ending.
It does. And I think I read a review where they said the first third is very adventure and caperish. We'll use that word. The last third is very romance novel. And in the middle, they said they went full on anime, which I think meant they went full on crazy. Because it really did. She did turn directions, which worked. Don't get me wrong. She went from them fighting each other to having to join up to fight to
be on the same team.
But that foe really was kind of over the top, crazy, like Batman villain kind of guy.
The character of Lamb, and that's and I was just like, oh, this is a little different, and I'm not sure it worked 100% for me, unless. Like, I wish Lamb had been a villain, like, the whole way through. Like Pizarro was.
He came in a little late.
Yeah, and, but we see Pizarro, which is the hitman that is, making sure Esme is fulfilling her part of the deal.
Right.
And so we see him all the way through. But we just get Lamb sort of in the middle and then closer to the end again. So I think I would have liked to have seen him more as a consistent villain throughout and not just, it felt more like a device than an actual villain thread.
That's a good way to put it. Cause it was very clear that she as a writer realized I can't have them keep doing this back and forth, almost miss the entire book. That's going to get really dull. She knew that. So she said, it's very clear. She said, okay, well then, you know what? They need to band together and spend time together fighting a common foe so they can see how much they have in common and actually talk to each other again. Besides this whole, I need a divorce, but I want you type of conversations they were having.
Yeah.
So it worked in that sense, but I agree with you. Had they introduced Lamb a little earlier,
Or alluded to him, so the thread was consistent all the way through. You know
They
what I
did
mean?
allude to him, though. Now that I think about it, when he goes to the jewelers to inquire about the tiara, they said another guy came in here with an egg-shaped head.
Yeah.
So we needed a couple more of those.
Yeah. To me, it felt a little more dropped in than woven through. So
Well, because he was so crazy.
he was crazy, like
That's why
jumping like crazy.
Said it was full on anime because he was totally over the top with a chicken
Oh,
patch.
he was swirling around with capes and he was on a trapeze, and like even the description of what he looked like with his egg head and like no neck, and like it was just, I agree.
He swings in going, it's not all the sparkly things, and disappears. And he was a great character, but he was just so abrupt given like the tone of the rest of the book.
Yeah.
And I was kind of glad he came back in the end, but it was just for a short period.
But at least then it made sense to have him earlier because he did play a role in the end. And it was like, you know what he reminded me of? Although this is going to sound really weird, but like when he showed up at the end, it was almost like one of those Newman kind of moments, right? Like,
it's like, oh, lamb. Yeah.
Anyway.
I said he reminded me of like a Batman villain, but not like the movie Batman villains, but like the 60s TV show Batman.
Yeah. It was campy.
Burgess Meredith.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there was that, and I agree, but I think you had pointed this out too, that as far as like a romance novel goes, like she hit all the beats structurally, it was perfect. Like you said, you know,
if you like romance, this would be very satisfying.
Yeah, and they were adversaries in the first act, and then of course, then when you have to have that big turning point, then they become allies of a sort, even though they're still out for themselves, but they have to work together.
Yeah.
And then by the time you get to the third act, and you have that all is lost moment, and so like it really does structurally follow every beat, and every time something would get maybe it would start to lag a little bit, she would put in something that would complicate things and keep the pace going. So I was actually pretty okay with that.
She did a great job with that. I made the comment, I said, if I had to teach a class on romance writing again in the our old bailiwick, but she hit every beat. And I will say that third act was extremely emotionally satisfying.
Yes.
He turned it up, and that right at the end when the all is lost, which is pretty much the whole third act. And she dragged it out, which is great because it wasn't like one of those, let's have a conversation and resolve the whole thing.
No, there were several components to that whole thing and how they had to work. Like it was always lost, and then they had to work through everything. And just when you think, you know, maybe, then betrayal happens again. And just when you think maybe, you know, so I thought she did a really great job at that.
Yeah. And, you know, the issues that she set up for them were psychological issues. You don't clear them up with one conversation.
Right.
And I mean, particularly Esme, I took a long time to warm up with her, but by that third act, she won me over.
Yeah. And I think once she's back with Mimsy, you know, with her mom, and she's kind of licking her wounds and figuring things out, then it's like, oh man, like you just understand that all of her emotional unavailability comes from this, you know, the messages that she's heard her whole life long.
Right. And all her attitude in the first 2/3 is very much armor.
Yeah.
And it was the armor that was putting you off. And then you get to the third act and you're like, oh, she dropped it. This is really who she is. And,
I liked her right from the beginning.
Oh, see, I loved him.
Well, I loved him too. He was suave.
Jasper was adorable.
He was dashing and a good guy, and also he would turn up everywhere every time she tried to give him the slip, and then he'd just turn up and like smile at her, and it was so infuriating for her, and I loved that. And
he was amused by it. He was not like, he actually respected her for this stuff.
I gotta tell you, when she described his hair as like, because it was sort of a light brown or whatever, and he has curls, and it's all sort of brilliantine back, but he has like one curl that kind of drops over his forehead. I'm like, heck yes.
Yeah, and she even says it later. I think there's something she says like hot potatoes and
I don't
It
know,
was
but
some 20s expression, and it's just
yeah,
like, that girl, it's going to drive everyone crazy.
yeah,
And you're like, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And even he, though, he's funny because he said in it, but he used to make some comment like, I know I'm good looking. Everyone gets a gift.
Yeah, and I liked his friend, and I
Yeah, I kind of want his friend to have his own book.
Mond, yeah, and I liked his motivation, but I want to point something out before we move on to like other good stuff, and it was the one thing that pulled me out of the book that should have been picked up.
Yeah.
And that is that Jasper's whole goal is for legitimacy with his grandfather. He's the bastard son of a bastard. So, his father was born on the wrong side of the blanket, and then so was he. And so he's trying to get his grandfather's approval, wants to be accepted into the family, the whole thing, which is fine. It's a great motivation, right? But the whole goal is so that, basically he would he would become his grandfather's heir, not just to his estate, but to his title.
Right.
And the problem is illegitimate children cannot inherit a title. So he could inherit assets, the estate, whatever, but he could not become, because his grandfather's a duke. So he could not become a duke because he's an illegitimate grandson. So that part, I was just like, whoa, wait a minute. And so that had pulled me out. And I thought, it would have been easy to just say, like, he understood he could never hold the title, but he still wanted his grandfather's approval. He still wanted to be, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I do.
Yeah. So that was the one thing that for me, was the one spot out of a book that I actually really enjoyed a whole bunch, but pulled me out.
Yeah, I confess, when you told me that, I'm like, I should have known that. And because I did know it, but I was so into the book that I was like, okay, whatever.
Right. And it's that fairy tale quality, right?
I'm sorry?
It's that fairy tale quality. And like, if you don't quite realize or whatever, you just sort of go along and go, oh yeah, well, it's so great. And then you just kind of realize that, wait a minute, that's not how it works. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was laughing because they make that made it through, and I'm like driving myself crazy because in Italy there were 4 different types of secret police, and they all had different start and end dates, and which one started when. And I'm like losing sleep, going, oh my God, someone's going to call me on the fact that he was up in north. He did not come down to Italy until 1944, and it's like,
yeah.
And I'm like, oh wait, she just like messed up all of English law, and it was okay, and I didn't care. So
yeah, and I mean, it really didn't take away from my enjoyment of the book. It was just one of those things that I noticed that I thought, like, oh poop. Oh poop.
So what were the pros for this book for you?
The structure, the concept, the dialogue. She had a really great way of painting a picture that felt very, like, the voice was very 1920s.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed that. Like, honestly, I liked everything else about it. Like, I really did enjoy this book. I enjoyed the characters. I was iffy on the character of Lamb, but I mean, this would have been, this is a 4 to 4.5 star read for me.
Yeah, I would say it was a 4-star read for me, 4.5.
Yeah.
I agree with you on all of that. I said, I think the thing that was, and it is a personal bugaboo, is that they kept repeating how they couldn't be together. Like she, it's like every maybe 10 pages, we got to mention about how, but yet that, how much she cared for her, or how much she could feel the tension growing between them, but they could never be. No, I could never, they constantly. And I was like, we might have overplayed that just a hair.
But it's like, who are you trying to convince, me or you, right? Like if they tell themselves that enough, maybe they'll actually believe
right.
it.
And I guess it's just a personal thing with me that's like,
Yeah.
you don't need to keep telling me the conflict every 10 pages. But I get what you're saying, that they were trying to convince themselves. So, and it's a minor nitpick. It's like I said, I tend to be nitpicky at things, but I love the banter. And I will again say, structurally, this girl knows how to write a romance.
And like, honestly, if we get down to, if what we have that we're using to say, it detracts from the novel, if it's all nitpicky stuff, then it's actually a pretty good novel, because we can't find anything big.
No, and that third act, I really was into the third act.
Me too.
And there were some scenes that really were great. Like there's a scene in prison.
Yes.
And where she goes into, like, it's got lice and it's and it's she does a great job. She did a very good job of setting every scene. And descriptions and like the side characters in it and stuff like that.
But she didn't go overboard on descriptions.
No,
she just blended in seamlessly, but painted a really great picture. It was really well done.
It was, and like Esme, we both agreed if we did the movie, Michelle Dockery would play her.
Yes, as soon as she described her as having like the dark hair that was cut on that bob, I was telling you earlier, I just saw Mary Crawley coming in after getting her hair cut and doing the whole thing
in the very sharp, clear, intelligent voice.
Yes.
So
yes,
she didn't ever, that was the funny thing. Like, he's a duke or illegitimate son, and he's got all these great education stuff. Never once did she think she was anything less than his equal. And she had good, strong self-image.
Yeah.
Even though she like crawled her way up from the gutter.
Yeah, her issues with relationships were not that she wasn't good enough.
No.
It was that she'd always been taught that you can't count on a man for anything and they'll always leave you.
Because her mother has horrible taste in men.
Yeah, so she's the one who does the leaving.
Yeah.
And it's probably a good thing to mention that both of them are illegitimate children.
Yeah. They're both very similar. They just don't realize it.
Yeah.
And they are two sides of the same coin. So now let's get to the part where we said we wanted to go back to people not reading it.
Right.
Okay. This book was put out by Thomas Nelson, which is HarperCollins' Christian publishing arm, which surprised me because I would not call this an inspirational or Christian romance. To begin with, there's drinking, there's smoking, and they're doing this sort of breaking a commandment thing the whole way through.
Yeah, they're stealing. It's a heist book.
Yeah. It reminded me more of an historical version of our old line, the Old Mills and Boone line that you and I wrote for. It reminded me more of something like that set in the 1920s.
Yeah.
But what matters about this is because I would like to know where they're shelving it. If it's being shelved in the historical romance section, or if it got put with the other Thomas Nelson Christian.
Yes.
Because if it's there, a lot of people who would enjoy the book aren't finding it.
Yeah.
And we've seen this a couple times. We talked about that with Olieska Gilmore's book.
Yeah.
That it was in fantasy.
Right.
And then I'll go to our friend Renee's, who also, because she was under an imprint that was inspirational, they put her in that same section.
Right. And Thomas Nelson's not part of HarperCollins, though.
Oh, it's not? See, they listed themselves when I went on there. They were talking about HarperCollins in their submission plan.
Oh, I didn't think so. I thought Love Inspired had that cornered with HarperCollins.
I thought they did too. It surprised me, but they're with Zondervan, and they might all be sucked in under HarperCollins.
I don't know. There's so many different imprints under umbrellas, but Thomas Nelson, regardless, is a
big name in Christian romance.
It is indeed. Yeah, and it is hard because one of the things with distribution is shelving.
Yeah.
And BISAC codes. So what categories you're going to put books and therefore where they're going to show up. And also, if you look at the reviews for this one, and I think both of us did go have a quick peek, most of the complaints that I saw on Goodreads all had to do with, if you're expecting a Christian book, this isn't it. Mm-hmm. Having issues with the drinking that happens within it. So I think that, sadly, that doesn't do a great book any favors when it's not put in the right place.
Exactly. I mean, it's the people who like to read Christian romance have a certain expectation, which is fine. It's not my cup of tea, but they don't expect drinking. They don't want smoking. They don't want. Now, there is no sex in this book. It's a clean book.
Yes, and
there is sex. It's off the page, and they're married.
And they're married, so it is off the page, and
right.
And
there is no premarital sex. She very clearly they're married, and she does keep a lot of that. But they don't want drinking and smoking, and they certainly don't want running around thieving, and they're still thieves at the end. But I think if you put it in a straight historical romance, that cover would have leapt off the shelf.
Yeah.
It is a good read. People should read it.
Yeah, I don't know. Of course, I don't know what her sales have been like with it, but
I just noticed that she didn't have as many reviews as I thought she would.
Yeah, and that's
and I didn't hear it talked up the same way, and I was like, that's
and so, but for those who don't like Christian romance or inspirational romance, and are looking for a good read, then we can recommend this because, I'll admit, when I first looked at it, I went, oh, it's a Christian romance. I wonder, or historical romance. I wonder how that's going to work. And it's not my preferred genre either. And then when I started reading it, I went, oh, this is not what I expected. And that's the whole purpose of, imprints and promises to your readers, that you know what to expect.
Right.
Like when you get a book from a certain author or certain imprint, or within a certain genre, you have an expectation of what you're going to get. And like you said with Alessia's, I was expecting something like, it really is a historical that blends with mystical, or it's Baba Yaga, right? And so, where do you shelve that? And as authors, I know we've all heard the stories of sending a book somewhere and a publisher going, we really like this, we just don't know where to put it. Yeah. And how you can write something fresh, and that's the issue. And because discoverability is so important. So, Yeah,
and I sympathize for someone like J'nell, who's, you get Christian readers who are saying, this isn't a Christian book, a Christian romance. It doesn't have, it's got things in it that we don't like. But then there are people going, oh, Christian romance, I'm not going to that section.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
And so she's stuck in this netherworld of not being able to be found. And I think that, I really would encourage people not to be put off by the fact that it's in the Christian romance section, because it's a terrific, terrific book. And it's not a Christian romance.
No. It's worth it.
Like I said, it's not a diss against Christian romances. Don't get me wrong. It's just that this is not one.
Right. Right. And that's the whole thing, is that things need to be categorized and shelved in the correct place so that people know where to go to find them. And when they get them, they'll know what to expect. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the downsides of this current distribution, where we're boiling everything down to, like you said, codes. There are things that straddle a bazillion different genres or different aspects of the genre. And we're asking everyone to be so narrow.
It's interesting. And like codes for the categories for paperbacks aren't always the same as for ebooks or for audiobooks. So like, depending on where your publisher chooses to put you, like I'm in war fiction. It's so weird.
You are in military fiction. That's right.
Yeah. Canadian military fiction, war fiction, historical fiction. Like, it's bizarre, but that's the category that's most appropriate. So, but I would say it's worth it for the banter alone for me.
I think this was a really fun read, particularly if you're in America, the next 51 days or so are not going to be fun. So
it's a great escapist read during an election year.
Sometimes you want a banterish, caperish escape read. If you like romance, if you like historical books and you don't mind the romance in it, whatever, this is a fun read and it is great escapism.
Yeah.
So
Pours the odd gin and tonic.
What was that?
I said she pours the odd gin and tonic.
Yeah, have a gin and tonic, have this book. It actually would, it's a great weekend read to curl up on a cold day and enjoy.
Yeah. All right. So what's up next for us?
Up next is we have Iona Gray coming to visit.
Yes.
And she wrote, what was the name?
The Housekeeper's Secret.
The House, yes, that's right.
The Housekeeper's Secret is her latest. Secret.
And I've read it already. Have you read it yet?
I am partway through it.
Downton Abbey all the way.
I'm a fan. She also wrote Letters to the Lost ages ago. And like, hot take, we know her from her prehistorical years when she was writing for Harlequin Presents.
Yep. And it's a good read, but it is hard. I'm reading it going, oh my God, it's like she took Downton Abbey and put it on the page. She does a great job of her settings. She does a great job with that setting.
Okay, well, hold that thought till we get her on here next Tuesday.
That's it. And then after that, we have, I know we have Kimberly Brock coming in next month, and we're doing it's Crystal King wrote.
Yes.
And I cannot remember the name of the book, so we will put it in the.
Hang on, I will find it because I'm that good.
I have COVID.
Yeah, right.
It's gonna be my excuse for the next 4
In
months.
the Garden of Monsters.
In the Garden of Monsters, that's right. And it sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
It's about Salvador Dali's muse, or is she the reincarnation of an ancient Greek goddess?
I know. So I'm looking forward to that. It sounds really good. And I'm really looking forward to Kimberly Brock's new one.
Yes, I love Kimberly Brock's writing. It's going to be a very Gothic-y, slow, hot, lazy day, syrupy kind of.
Ooh, I love that syrupy.
Well, that's syrupy and sweet. Syrupy in that, like, it's.
I know.
It pours out very thick and slow.
Yeah. No.
And I love that about her writing. So.
Yeah.
It's going to be some good reads coming up.
All right. So I think that's what's coming up for us in the next couple weeks.
So we will see you. I think it's actually a week from today.
A week from tomorrow.
We're
yes, a week from today. Sorry. I'm also I'm still on holiday time.
Really looking forward to talking with her.
Yes, me too.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And don't forget to like us and subscribe and join our Facebook community at facebook.com/groups/step into the story.
That's it. All right. Thanks.
Bye-bye.